Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the Kumar Duban Pass. That's the region where it happened. It happened in, I think it was the 80s, if I remember correctly, 80s, 90s, on the border of Russia and Kazakhstan in a region known as like the Kumar Duban Mountain region. I gave most of the details in the video, but the short run through is that this lady was known for taking these groups of hikers on these like week-long hiking trips up into the mountains around Kazakhstan, which are pretty considerable mountains. You've got to be like a decent survivalist to begin with to get up there. And this specific group that she went with was a group of her students, so to speak, who she'd been doing it with for a couple of years. So they were like very experienced. And this pass that they were going on wasn't particularly hard by any means. It was comparatively easy. They had taken all the food that they needed for the amount of time given. There was other groups who were hiking the mountain at the same time that they had planned to have rally points where they would meet up and then continue. And then one day, I believe it was about 5 days into the trip, the other group she was supposed to meet with did not see her at one of these rally points, or her group. And it had rained the day before. So yes, yeah, there's a good idea for what the region's like. It had rained the day before, so they just figured, oh, well, they probably just got slowed down because of the rain. And like, we'll see them whenever we get there. But sure enough, they get to the bottom of the mountain, and that group isn't there. So eventually, they launch an investigation. People start looking. And then about 3 days later, one of the students who was in that group shows up at a local city. And she goes to the police and tells them the whole story. The exact details of what she said isn't known. And then 2 weeks after that, and that's like one of the real suspicious details of the case, they didn't launch an investigation for 2 weeks. Weather was pretty clear at the time. 2 weeks later, they go look for them up on top of the mountain. And then there is video footage of the entire search for them and their eventual finding of the body. And then I believe it was 6 people. The survivor made 7. 6 people, all within a couple hundred feet of each other, are just lying dead in a clearing on top of the mountain. They're like, a couple of them are lying next to each other. One of them's like more towards the woods as if they're running away. 2 more together at the front of the woods. And it starts to paint a really weird picture. The initial idea at the time was that the survivor had murdered the others, because logically, if 6 people die, only 1 comes back, that would be the solution. However, there was no evidence on the bodies that there was any kind of fight or any kind of strangulation marks or whatever. But then even more suspiciously, after doing a full autopsy, there was no evidence of anything that happened to these bodies. They just kind of dropped over. There wasn't signs that you would see in hypothermia, like late stage, what is it? Like the lung fluid starts to contract or recede or whatever. And the skin of the bodies were too decomposed at this point to see if they were frozen up or anything. So it remained a total mystery of what had happened for about 20 years. Eventually, a reporter, actually it's more like 30 years, it's like 28. A reporter eventually tracked down the one survivor and asked for testimony, because what had happened is she gave the police a testimony and then never mentioned it to anyone else. So she finally sat down with the reporter after 30 years and gave her side of the story and said that what had happened is they were just walking down the mountain. Everything was normal. It had rained the day before, although they were okay. They had ate breakfast. And then one of them starts screaming and coughing up blood. And then it was the teacher, runs over to help him out. She kneels down next to him and immediately starts coughing up blood too. She looks up at the group and blood is running out of her eyes, and she's telling them to get away. So, of course, the 5 remaining begin to freak out and run. And as they're running, one of the guys drop. Exact same thing happens to him. One of the girls, I think it was maybe his girlfriend or something, comes back to help. Same thing happens later. To her.
Carry on.
Yeah, it's like such a weird, bizarre story.
Yeah.
Eventually, the rest of them run, and the only one who keeps running and does not succumb to whatever's happening is the one girl who ended up being a survivor. She had enough temporary shelter on her back that she was able to set up camp for the night, although all of the food was with the people who had died. So the next day she did the math and was like, I can't walk for 4 days without food or water. I'm going to have to go back to the bodies. So the next morning she gets up, she goes back to the bodies, and they're all still laying there. They're in the exact same position that they had dropped down at. So she took her food and managed to make the hike. The 4 days, went to the police station. And the reason she said that she had never told that story is because she assumed no one would believe her and would think that she's covering up for some reason. Because, you know, if one girl survives a hiking trip and there's like, oh no, they all started bleeding from the face, that's going to cause some suspicion, which is the reason she told
when
them.
they found the bodies, and you were saying they didn't see anything about them like having, you know, died in a curious condition. What about all the vomiting and the blood and the
it had been 2 weeks outside, so like the top layer of skin was just like darkened, sunken in across the face. All the blood at that point had either, whenever someone dies outside in the woods, there's a lot of bloating and like pustules and other gross stuff.
Not to mention the crows had picked these people's eyeballs out, and like the foxes ate their lips off. Like God knows what was left of them.
Yeah, it probably looked pretty bad.
You can't see like the full body on the video, but he comes up to someone who's laying face down, and you can see his hands, and they're just like black and emaciated. So they're in a pretty rough condition. They weren't able to tell anything like if they're
like one of those Everest bodies you see.
Yeah.
Where it's like they look like a really old piece of dog shit.
So I think one of your explanations, and probably the one that you think is the best, is what I agree with, and it makes a lot of sense to me. But before we I feel like it's almost a spoiler. Let's see what Woody and Taylor, do you guys have any theories about like what could have gone wrong here?
So she didn't murder them.
You know where this happened, the time
of year. That was one of the theories.
And you know the roughly the
I like this game, Kyle. This is good. This is
the murder thing. The murder thing doesn't make sense because you said it was a woman who survived, and it was a group of people who would have like fought back if someone was just like started willy-nilly murdering.
Yeah, the survivor was like.
What about poison? Girl. Like, could you poison? Are there any berries that cause symptoms what they experienced, or any food like that in the region?
Go ahead.
Well, they're all survivalists, right? Like they know the poison.
They could be bad ones.
From the good.
I painted something today. It's terrible.
But these are.
Taylor, I don't like the way you're doing this. You need to lay out your
Let me lay this out. So
Wendigoon
gave you like the fast forward version, but these are the best. This lady, like I think I've made fun of her before in the past. Like some lady led a bunch of kids up into the wilderness, and then they all ran out of their tents naked at night and froze to death. Like I think that's what I had heard. But no, like she was a legit like fucking Sarah Connors style survivalist lady who knew her shit and knew how many calories each person would need to be eating each day down to 100 calories. And like she was an expert.
Here's my theory.
Okay.
She looked at her food supplies, determined that there wasn't enough for everyone to live, found some way to kill the people around her so that she could, and made it out.
Okay. So murder is
the way I'm going on this.
Okay.
All right.
Did she report that they were like short on food during their expedition? I guess if you murdered someone for food, you wouldn't.
They could have made it out. They could have made it out without food as long as they had water, right? Because like they're survivalists.
4 days. Yeah.
To continue giving the facts, whenever they found the bodies, most of them had their food supplies still on them that hadn't been ate through.
Okay.
Indicating that they didn't starve. So.
Oh, I'm gonna change my answer. There was a romance thing. She didn't like. There was some sort of interpersonal thing going on.
7-way, and she wanted to be she wanted a good old fashioned traditional 4-way.
God intended.
Like this guy,
Four men,
that guy. This guy like a girl, but she wanted to be liked instead. So she murdered like 3 or 4 of them, so they wouldn't know she was targeting that girl in particular.
Or maybe
but it all happened so quickly, apparently, because they're all in that little area.
Well, if I thought it was that, I would probably imagine a scenario where she killed one girl, but then she got caught, and like maybe they were like, you killed Amber, we're telling on you when we get back, and then she poisons everybody that night. Like
just became a brawl. Oh, you're saying she killed them after one murder? I see what.
Yeah. Because what are they gonna do? Arrest her? They're 4 days out. They're like, I can't believe that's what would happen. They'd be like, I can't believe you killed Amber. And you know, maybe they got into a fight.
You don't tie him up or something. If someone murders someone on a camping trip, you don't go, "Hey, strike one, Buster." That's fucking absurd. No, you would tie them up and leave them, if anything. Like,
if it was a cute girl and there were other girls there to be like, Mark, you're not gonna tie up Becky, are you? Her hands are turning blue. She said she can't breathe. what do you mean she can't breathe? Her hands are tied. She can't breathe.
I don't imagine.
You cut those ropes just to avoid the screaming.
Just
This is funny because
no, that's
Kyle
how it happened.
knows
And then one guy got so tired of it, he tied them all up.
he just left them.
Piece.
Just
Just a random
It's real
woodsman was
weird.
like,
all
"You're-"
6 of them were tied up in one circle. Crazy how bears do that randomly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying. There must be an answer to this that you guys know. I don't want you. I keep going back to poison. I don't understand
It's
what
okay
can
to
make
be wrong,
everyone
Taylor.
do the
Just move
same
the show
thing.
along.
Yeah, according to my theory, the one that like I subscribe to, you're not far off with the poison.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
What do they suspect?
Spill the beans, Wendigoon.
Yes,
Tell
I'll
them.
spill the beans. All right. So this is kind of like a bit of a cheat because you didn't know this information going in. However, this region of the Kumar Duban region, which is again on the border of
It's full of ghosts.
Very haunted.
Notoriously full of ghosts.
the ghost.
It's the home of the Ghoul King.
Oh yeah, it's a bad area where we got bad with ghosts. Lousy with ghosts. Yeah.
Right. Right with the
Right with ghosts.
All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's ghost season up there. You jest, but this is how most of the theories I read about. This is where they come from.
They're fun. I like it.
They are. Anyway, so that region that's on the Russian border was used during the Cold War as a weapons testing facility. That is an openly documented fact that they would use the mountains to test mortar fire or artillery barrages, and most importantly for this story, gas attacks. There are specific strains of nerve gas that were tested in the region at that time that can last in the air for, I think some of them are up to like 1.5 years. Like once they're detonated, they just have to disperse and then hopefully no one breathes it in. And a lot of them were detonated like in these completely obscure like canyons and mountains for that reason. Most importantly to this story, most of them are pliable to water. So if you were to physically flush a region or wash it, it would cause the gas to not be destroyed, but to move somewhere else. So the theory that a lot of people subscribe to, and the one that makes the most sense to me, is that they're hiking down the mountainside, and then it had rained the day before, which again matters for this story. So it rains, and this rain causes a washout of a mountain, a canyon, a valley, or something, and causes the gas to move along the mountainside. This group of hikers are then walking, and it's also important for this story. This was like in the final years of the Cold War, whenever stuff like nerve gas was being developed a lot. So it makes sense that if they did test it, it would still exist around there. So they're walking down the mountainside, and then all it takes, I forget what the name of the one I showed in the video was that was tested in that region, but it is so effective that like half of one of Kyle's vape hits would kill you instantly. It just takes a very minute amount. So as it's flooding through the region, one of them just breathes in a little bit, and that would immediately cause the lining of their lungs to begin to fall apart. It would cause the bleeding of the eyes and other soft tissues. Another detail I didn't mention, according to the survivor... Kyle's dying. Yeah, see, like that, the nerve gas, there it goes. What I saw that scratch in your eyes. What I didn't mention is one of the girls who was affected, according to the survivor, she started bashing her head onto a rock and like scratching at her throat, indicating that it was painful or she could feel something in there. So that would explain what Kyle's about.
What about the rock? Because of the pain?
Oh, well, she would have been feeling like the inside of her eyes and like nasal cavity bleeding and flaring out. And according to this girl, she just started hitting her head against a rock as she was dying.
That is so fucked up.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. That would also explain why one of them got affected, and then the person who came to stand in the same spot they were also got infected. There's also the very important mention from the survivor that it was foggy on the mountain that day, which could have not entirely been fog. So yeah, the theory that a lot of people go with, and I'm not the only harebrained one, this is kind of like the consensus online, so to speak.
No, I'm in, man.
That they were victims of old Soviet weapon testing. So
yeah, that makes when you said that in your video, I was like, yes, that checks too many boxes with it's in the right region, the right time frame, and the right effects. And I don't know anything. I'm sure there's some poisons that would cause that, but none that should be there other than the ones that were being tested there in the region. Now, whether it was a cloud of it that like moved in a special, unique way, that I'm not so sure. I could easily see one of them found the shell and had it in his bag. And then maybe the cops found it and were like, oh, call the military. And the military was like, you never saw this. Like something like that could have happened. But
that's
because the cloud seems like funky to me.
That's also part of the reason. So her original police statement was never published. She said later that's the story she told the police, and they kept it confidential for some reason. And that's also why people think the police didn't investigate for 2 weeks. Because the police are like, oh, well, that's the old weapons testing. We want to make sure that stuff clears out of the area before we go up there and go looking.
Because the military is like, hey, police, give us 2 weeks. And then trust me, you can walk on as much grass and turn over as many leaves as you like.
During the Cold War, anything like that would have been suppressed. The United States was suppressing tons of stuff, and the Soviets were even worse. You needed to hide every failure because it made you, it was life or death. If it looked like they might win that launch sequence battle, then they might actually do it. That's why you had to stay a step ahead, or at least so we were told.